Hi, welcome to Girlfriends Unwine. Welcome to today's video. I believe last video we mentioned that today we're going to have a special guest, hence why the laptop is out. We're going to be doing a Zoom meeting, so you might, after our intro, just see the computer screen because we're going to record it straight off of Zoom. But today is just going to be about Black Lives Matters from a Black woman's perspective. This is a woman's channel, but how we said, this is a channel where we're just going to talk about whatever we feel like talking. It's just about what we're going through, and we wanted to have an open and honest discussion and see where we think similarly, where we think differently, how we can help each other and be more compassionate towards what's going on and all that stuff. So yeah.
I really wanted to also talk about this because it did touch home a little bit, and so I think it's important to talk about it. Like you guys know, my husband is Black, and I'll tell you guys probably more after we talk with our guest today. So let me just go ahead and introduce her. She's my sister-in-law, Yoshanique Brown. I was gonna say Lee. She's actually got married like 2 years ago.
She's a married woman too.
Yes, and a woman of God. So her name is Yoshanique Brown, and she got her bachelor's degree from Dominguez Hills, and she got her master's degree from USC. So we have a smart girl here.
Do you know what she studied?
Social studies. No, social studies. Social worker.
Oh, social worker. So this is good because this is kind of like on the...
Yeah. So she got her degrees for a social worker. We'll ask her, but I think she's still working on becoming a lawyer. I don't know. But she also has a finance business with her husband. So we'll ask her more questions right now that we go into our Zoom call.
All right, thank you guys for watching.
All right,
Hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
All right. So
Hi, yo. Welcome to our channel, to Girlfriends Unwine. You're welcome to get yourself some wine and join us.
yes, hello. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good, and yourself?
Good. We're here.
Do you want to give us a background of who you are? I would kind of give a little bit of your school background, that you have a business and everything, but we want to hear it from you, like where you come from, what you do, where do you work, everything.
Cool. So, again, my name is Yoshanique. I am 29 years old. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. I'm married. Me and my husband actually been together going on 11 years, married going on 2 years. We don't have kids yet, but that is the plan eventually. I am an investigator with LA County Probation, so I work full-time as an investigator. And then part-time, and my husband have our business and financial services, in which we help families basically plan and prepare financially for their future, providing a wide range of services. And then I got my bachelor's degree at Cal State Dominguez in criminal justice. I got my master's degree at USC in social work.
Good thing you shared that, because I got your background a little wrong. I'm like, yeah, she went to Dominguez Hill for a social worker and then master for social worker.
No, but it seems like we're talking to the right woman. Like,
yes.
what your background, I think, is going to be helpful for this conversation. To like, I don't have a background in any of that, so that's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So you want to start by asking her questions?
Okay, so first, we want to start and give you the platform to hear your opinions, and then from there, like, if we have questions, if it's okay with you, we'll jump in, or if you have questions for us that we know nothing about this stuff, just go for it and we'll flow from there. So, like, first platform, what do you think about what's going on right now with Black Lives Matter, the riots, the looting, everything? Or anything you want to say right now is like all what you want to say, and then we'll go from ask questions.
Okay. So let's start with the back end of it. So let's start with like the riots and the looting. So you may agree or disagree with this opinion, but I think it comes from my own personal perspective, but also the social work aspect of it. So a big part of me is like, I don't just look at what people do, I look at why. And so while society is like, you know, upset and judging, that's essentially what they're doing, judging the people who are rioting and looting, and they're not looking at why. And so whether it may be because they're, you know, using this time to, you know, be opportunists, it doesn't matter. You're not looking at why they're doing it. We're forgetting that we've been in a pandemic and we've been in a safer at home, you know, regulation for what, about a quarter, something that we're not used to, something that this generation is 100% not used to, people are not used to. And so people have lost jobs, people are dealing with financial strain and things like that. And this isn't to say what they're doing is okay, but it's to understand the other side of it. And so while you see people out there, you know, looting, my immediate response isn't like, oh my gosh, shame on them. My immediate response is like, wow, the fact that you feel like you have to steal something lets me know that there's a lack somewhere else. And so coming at an approach of compassion and understanding first before the judgment, before saying what you did was wrong. You know, Linda's a parent. So as Elijah gets older, certain things he may do may not necessarily be okay. You know, she may catch him smoking weed. And instead of attacking the action immediately, how about find out why he started smoking weed? How about finding out, you know, what is the root issue first and then correct him? And so that's the issue there. And then with rioting, I just understand that, you know, sometimes it's like that's your way of expressing yourself. Not to say that it's right or wrong, but you think of like kids who have tantrums. You think of like us as wives, if we get upset with our husband, we may start, you know, arguing with them, nagging or yelling at them. It's not to say that our behavior is okay, but it's understanding why it came out that way, why the triggers and things like that. So I don't judge those who are rioting or looting because I understand it. Honestly, if it wasn't for my relationship with Christ, and me having to be stuck at home because I have asthma, but if it wasn't for my relationship with Christ, I probably would be out there burning some stuff down and cussing people out and probably even looting, like literally. I would probably be doing those things. And so I'm more compassionate to not cast judgment so soon. And then in regards to just the whole issue as a whole, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, it's a sad reality that we even have to say that. You know, the fact that we even have to say Black Lives Matter. And then there's the issue of people like, well, Blue Lives Matter and all lives matter. And it's like the fact that you're saying that means you don't understand. It's always this issue. Well, what about me? What about me? So imagine like you guys are having a conversation and Carrie comes to Linda, you know, dealing with whatever's going on in her marriage or her schooling or whatever, an issue. And then Linda makes it all about herself. And it's like, you're like, as Carrie, you're like, did you not hear? You know, like I came to you about me and you're making it about yourself. And so that's the issue. Like, it's just dealing with the issue at hand. The issue at hand is the reality that Black individuals are treated far worse than any other race, ethnicity, individual in society. And that's just across the board. And so it's unfortunate. And then from my experience, it's sad that a lot of people don't get it. And a lot of people are desensitized to it and it's become so normal. And a lot of people are struggling to wrap their head around the reality of what it means to be Black. And the other aspect of it is the reality is it isn't just Black against white. Like there's Asians who are racist towards Black people. There's Hispanics who are racist towards Black people. Like it's not just white and Black, like it's literally just systemic and it's unfortunate. And so this Black Lives Matter, I want people to understand that it's not a trend, it's not a movement, it's literally a lifestyle. It's an understanding to help people really grasp what that means when we say Black Lives Matter. You know, like you guys have to understand, not you guys, but in societal, like you as a general term, you guys have to understand that that we matter, basically. And we have not been treated as though we mattered, and we've been quiet for so long. And now we have this pivotal event, unfortunate event that has happened, you know, And the difference is, this has been going on, but the difference is now everyone's in quarantine, or was at that time. And so everyone's glued to their phone and the TV. And so you have no other choice but to deal with it. Whereas like in 2016 and Trayvon Martin's and things like that, like it was more of a trend. Like they talked about it for a little bit and then it died out. But a lot of people, it wasn't global. Like this is not just happening in America. Like there's protests in other countries because of the times that we're in. And it's unfortunate that a pandemic had to happen for people to basically face the reality of our country.
And because I think I was guilty of like not understanding the whole like the Black Lives Matter, the phrase. And I think it wasn't until here, like recently, sadly, hearing like I don't know if you know Pastor Carl Lentz. And
yes, you saw the preaching?
Yeah, I saw the preaching, and he like, because it's true, like we've read the Sermon on the Mount so many times, and we don't automatically say like, oh, the poor are blessed in spirit, and then it's like, okay, but what about the rich? Like we know that he's talking to a specific group, so it's like, okay, like it's time in different moments in history, like different, like people are hurting, and it's again very insensitive if like someone was hurting and be like, okay, but you know I'm hurting too, and like lay my problems down. So that definitely changed my perspective a lot. And yeah, it's true. Like I think right now people are just so hurt and upset, so they're riling out in different aspects. Of course, I honestly don't think the answer is like looting and protesting, but yeah, we can't negate that they are hurt. But how you said, like with Elijah, like if he would to react, like act out as a parent, I would like lovingly, how you said first, I think that's one of our faults as a society. Like it's very easy to point blame, and when someone's hurting and you just are like judging them, it doesn't fix anything. But then also my first reaction as a parent would be like to listen to him, but then also like lovingly like discipline. So one of the questions I'd ask, like, what do you think of the not the people who are peacefully protesting, because obviously that's their right, and I think that people should go out and speak their opinion and no one should shut them out. That's one of our blessings here as in America. But those that are illegally, you know, like looting, stealing, to how do we balance like listening to them and like lovingly disciplining them so that, you know, it doesn't, like things like that, people don't get hurt, people don't get killed, people's businesses don't come out, but a point where they're also, they don't feel like they're not being listened, that they're not taken care of emotionally, because a lot of people are, how you said, hurt and broken from this.
I think it has to be done more on a smaller scale, just because unfortunately it's systemic racism. And so we have to accept the harsh reality, like that's not going to change in for a long time. And so I think that, you know, so for example, if we were to go to Minneapolis and saw the people who were burning down, you know, Wendy's and things like that, or whatever it was, if there was someone in that group who had more level-headed or who was able to manage their temperament better and have leadership components to them, they could gather that group and say, hey guys, I know this is how you want to react, but how about, you know, and give them other ways, because what you also have to understand is that some people just don't know how to respond when they're upset. You know, you think of just in regular terms, don't even think of like looting and burning things down and rioting. Think about you having to teach Elijah how to respond when he doesn't like something. You don't throw a tantrum when you don't get your way. You don't cuss me out because you're upset, things like that. And so you don't shut your husband out because you're mad at him. Like, we have to learn how to deal with our emotions when we don't like something, or when someone does us wrong, you know, essentially like turn the other cheek. And so unfortunately, that's not taught a lot. We're just taught to be impulsive. And so we had more smaller scale leadership groups, community groups, things like that, giving them a safe space to express themselves while having people there who are empathetic and understanding, and then them able to get it out. You know, and then some people are able to express that anger through music, through dancing and things like that. But if you don't teach them that, then they're going to direct it the wrong way.
Yeah, I agree with you how like it has to be done in like community, because the people closest to you are the ones who are going to get across. Like I think it's dumb, like someone outside coming and telling you how to change your life and Like if someone were to come and be like, okay, but you were never here, like why do you care? Or you don't know me, you don't know my specific struggles, you don't know what I need. Like it's not an easy fix for everyone all across the board. I think there has to be like specifications. So what do you think about what's it called, like this whole like defunding the police, taking the money to do like social, because I think that's the thing, right? They want to take, I think people are getting confused with defunding the police of like completely getting rid of it, whereas what I'm reading about is like they want to just take certain funds and putting it into programs so police aren't like the ones handling emotional crisis or stuff like that.
Right. So me personally, I'm in support of defunding them. Like you said, like they're not saying like eradicate police, but if they're given like $3 billion just for the police force, and then communities and other organizations is getting like 2 million, you're overfunded. You're way overfunded. You have more than what you need when you can diversify those funds into areas and communities and programs that will help bridge a gap, that will help bring better social, I guess, like just being basically good citizens in a sense, and social awareness and resources and things like that. Like if you were to allocate the money differently, it would be more beneficial. And it also helps reduce crime, you know. And so I do think that they need to diversify the funding of it. And people are so close-minded right now that they say they hear defund the police and they think we're saying eradicate the police.
Yeah.
And that's what's unfortunate. Like, no, you're not understanding. Like the fact that they say, when we say Black Lives Matter, they think we're saying nobody else matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just you choosing to be ignorant, because there's enough resources out there for you to do the work and educate yourself.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was like, okay, defund, like, what does it mean? But that's where I like was researching and like, okay, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. Like, no police force needs like a tank or anything. Like, it makes sense for the military, but police, like local police, don't need like so much of this like money for tools that they're not especially being accountable with, and they're not using it wisely. And so I do think like there needs to be some reform because it doesn't make sense for authority to, they're very like heavy-handed, and they just need better training. But one of the things that like worries me, I think like from like my Christian standpoint, and I want to know like what your thoughts what your thoughts are on this. It's how you said, I understand like the pain, and I think it's a very sensitive time, and that's why like I personally decide, like I have a lot of opinions, but I decide, okay, it's not wise right now to like say it because so many people are hurt, and maybe it might be like insensitive. But as from a Christian perspective, it has been in my mind going around like this rhetoric of like, and it's not everyone, but like there's for sure certain individuals that have this rhetoric against like authority. And as like Christian, you know, like knowing that one of the passages I was thinking about was like Romans 13, where it says, you know, like God places authority there. They're there to, you know, eradicate bad. And obviously the police they're killing innocent individuals. That's what they're doing. They're killing people who shouldn't have died a horrible death. They're criminalizing people who are innocent. But one of the things that was like thinking about the context in Romans 13, it was like Paul was writing this where Emperor Nero was in charge, and like they were killing Christians. They were putting up in torches for like no reason. And it's so like crazy to think like, wow, Paul had the selflessness to say like, honor them even though they're persecuting us and we're innocent. And one of the things that worries me is like, obviously if you can change something, change it. Like, why are we going to accept innocent people like to die? Like people of men of created an image of God die. But at the same time, what bothers me is that rhetoric where like so many people are so easily hating, because hate I think is it's very powerful, and it can turn a good thing into a bad thing. And that's what's worrying me, where people are using this emotion instead to do good, like putting down our authority, like hating on it. And I feel like that can make good things, but then easily hate can, you know, cause evil in the long run too. And that's what worries me as a Christian.
So that's a good question and a point. So what I would say to that is the perspective of, I totally agree. Like, so for me personally, because I'm a Christian, because I'm a believer, you won't catch me like bashing or saying like F the police or playing YG's new song, like F the police, just because it goes against my belief. And so I always have to prioritize my relationship with Christ above my personal feelings, above anything, basically. Like I can't compromise that aspect of me. And so while I can understand why people are saying like F the police and things like that, I can't compromise that. I still have to respect them. And so like when I see certain riots where like the police aren't doing anything and you're antagonizing them, you're disrespecting the fact that they are authoritative and things like that. I think it's just this thin line of, I feel as though it's not fully just them disrespecting authority. I think it's also this aspect of like, there's been this narrative of like, well, all cops are not bad, but you're not looking at the other aspect of it. Like, think about that Asian guy that was there, Tao, who you saw him doing this and you basically covered for him. And so my perspective is if you are watching things unjustly happen, if you're turning your eye to it, then you're part of the problem. And so I think as a whole, that is what society is saying. I don't think that I don't feel that it's just like F the police because it's authority. I think it's because of what it's representing and what it's allowing. So the whole like grouping of police is whether they're good or bad is because the reality is there are good cops there. And if there's so many good cops, then why isn't things changing? Why is it so systemic? If there's so many good cops, why is it that you see him shoot that guy and you guys allow him to do false police reports, or you just turn your head to it, or you just step away, but you're complying? Like, this is compliance. And so I think that it's not necessarily going against authority, it's going against the system of it. And so then it goes back to just in general, this is kind of diverting from your question, or your statement, but also like in general as believers, my struggle right now is I can't understand how the church is so divisive with this issue. Oh my gosh, I cannot understand. Like, I can't wrap my head around it. That's a whole nother conversation. But when we think of like biblical content, biblical scripture that talks about standing up for the oppressed and those who are not justly treated right and things like that. When you think about Jesus, like, I ain't saying Jesus is black or anything, black, white, whatever, I'm not saying that. But if Jesus was here, like, Jesus would be saying Black Lives Matter. Like, that's what I personally believe, because he stood up for those people. Think about the Samaritan woman. You know, think about all these times he stood up for these people. Think about the adulterous woman, like all these different people that he stood up for. And yet it's such a difficult issue for the church, like the body of Christ, to comprehend and to stand up against and stand up for this oppression that's in our society, and putting band-aids on it, like, oh, let's just pray about it. No, you got to pray about it, but you got to put action too. Faith without works is dead. Like, don't just pray about it. What are you going to do? Why aren't you having these tough conversations? Why can't you talk about this racial issue in your church and really get to the root of it? Why is there people on the same team and you know what your brother and sister in Christ is going through and you have not even batted an eye? Why aren't you hurting because they're hurting? Like, that's a problem. Like, that is a issue with the heart. That is an issue. Like, how can you say that you share the same heart of God and be unbothered by this? And that's what's really, really like bothering for me.
Girl, I was just about to ask, what do you think the church should do right now? Like, what do you think for us to help or understand? Like, but you kind of answered it.
Yeah, no, one of the things I agree, and I think I was like meditating on, because race has been a thing, like, for the first church struggled with race. Like, I think, and it sucks because as imperfect people, we're always gonna how you said, it's not gonna, like, it's such a hard thing that it's not gonna change. Like, there can be effort made and there can be progress, but it'll be always, there, because from the first church, like, the Jews were like, what the heck, the Gentiles, like, they're not gonna get circumcised, they're not gonna do this. And it was like, yeah, they're now, you know, now they can be saved. And one of the things I was thinking about, and it's like, I think one of the things that can help is for sure, like the body of Christ, how he says it should be like men and women, different races, different ages. And at least my church, like we're all Hispanic, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the all Hispanic church, but I think we should not be like okay with just staying like that, because at the end of the day, like the kingdom of God is going to look different races, different things. And I think we don't know what our brothers and sisters feel like because we're not, what's it called, we're not in community with them. We're not we don't know their issues. We don't know what they need help with. We don't know how to help them. And so it's very easy to, how you say, like turn an eye, or not turn an eye, but just not be aware, because we're not seeing it day by day. And I think one of the things that the church needs to be better on is how to have community with others that are not like you, because it's very easy in America to have different churches for different races, or not even different races, but like the same beliefs as you and the same culture as you, and easy to just not hang out in the same circle of other people, versus we try to be more diverse. We try to be. So I think that's one of the things. And even our church, like, I don't think our church is racist, but it's just a lack of knowledge. And how you said, and I think it's James who says, like, if you know what is wrong, you don't do it, it's still a sin. And there was, I'm going to say, like, I'm going to put my church on blast, but
yeah.
I felt the same way, girl. I was like, let me just put this out there. My church probably going to get put on blast.
Yeah, like my church, and I'm the pastor's daughter, but I
probably know this story, by the way.
I think it's just, because again, I don't think and I love my family, like my church family, I love them. I don't think it's racist, but it's definitely ignorance, and it's definitely hurtful. Like, so it's, at the end of the day, it's a sin for not loving them the way they should be loved. And so there was a time, was it your brother? Oh, Nate's brother? It was your brother. Yeah, it was your brother.
Your brother.
And his wife, I believe. And they came, and it was a time where we were doing community service for the church. So it was very often where people came to just do community service and not attend church. But your brother wanted to come with his wife and attend church visit. And one of the servers there asked them, oh, are you here for community service? And obviously, like, I would be what? Like, if someone approached me that way. And so again, it's just not, like, they're not used to seeing other people. And I don't think that person was racist, but it's not
implicit bias. That's what it's called.
Yeah, yes. And
implicit
they're not in community with those people. So they're just very ignorant, and they can easily hurt someone. And so I don't know. I don't know if you've talked to your brother and he told you this and how he felt, but I'm assuming like I would just be like, okay, I'm not coming back.
I know. I felt horrible.
I did too. When you guys told me, I was like, what?
I was like, Grace, this is horrible. That's my brother and my sister, first of all. I'm like, I invited them, excited, and then they come up with this. They told me that they were fine, but I don't know if they told you something else, but I feel horrible. I apologize to them over and over and over again in my name, in the church's name, in the Hispanic culture. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I still feel guilty.
As soon as you guys told me, I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And I even told my dad, I'm like, you have to train the first thing we should, and that's a problem, I think, like the first thing we should see is a brother and sister in Christ, not a person coming to volunteer, not a person who, whatever, like, we're all like brothers and sisters. So it sucks that our mind goes to something else. Again, and I don't think it was like, it's low-key racist, but I don't think they were like, oh, they were just like, oh, it's another person for community service. But it's like, no, like, we need to do better than that. Like, we need to love better than that. We need to be in community so that this thing doesn't happen again. And yeah, like, as soon as you guys told me, I felt like so bad. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
and what's funny, because like, Nate goes to her church, is full Hispanic. It's like, they didn't put like at least one and one like together.
I know, right? Like, oh, you're not Nate's brother.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, so I think that it goes back to what I said earlier, that because we've experienced so much of this, it becomes so normal. So even if it could have like really not bothered them, but the problem is that they experienced it so much that it's just like, like it becomes so normal. Like, we have normalized instances like that so much. Like, for example, I went to USC. Do you know how many times people asked me, was I a fan? They assumed I was a fan and not a student. My license plate says USC. I'm on campus at USC, and they assume I'm a fan, not that I'm a student. And so that's implicit bias. And I think that it's important that as a church, going back to your first question, like what does a church do? I think it's so, so important. Like me having my degree in social work, I think it's so important that our church like the church as a whole starts implementing different like trainings and awareness, especially with leadership at minimum. Because if I'm telling the truth, like at least for my church, leadership is a problem. Like we're having meetings and you can't comprehend how I'm hurt and you can't address it, and you like that's a problem. And so just the implicit bias and racial diversity and racial disparities and all those different things is so important. It's just the same as people just automatically assuming that you're Mexican. Like, excuse me, just because I'm Latina does not mean I'm Mexican, you know? And that's something that in our community that we have to understand, like the first Hispanic person you see is not Mexican. Like that's offensive. Stop it. That's ignorance. But I think that it's just something that as a church that we have to address, and we have to do the work in our heart and our perspective. And is exactly what you said, that if you're not in community with diversity, then it's quite natural that you're only going to cater to the needs of your people and your kind, and you're going to be ignorant to anything else outside of your community, which is not good. Like I would hope that as people you would have friends that don't just all look like you, that don't all believe what you believe. Like that's important. Like that's Jesus. Like Jesus would be at the club with me if I was a sinner trying to reach me. He ain't gonna be clubbing, but he's going to go in that environment. It's a heart issue and it's a perspective issue. And our church is diverse, and it's still issue because people they don't want to deal with the heart. Like you have to do the hard work. It's gonna hurt. Like when you really reflect, the gift of reflecting is so important. Because when you reflect, you realize like, oh shoots, I am a little prejudiced. Ooh, I am a little racist. Ooh, I do believe these stereotypes about A, B, and C. That hurts because you're like, I'm a good person though. Yeah, but you still have to understand like there's some stuff in you that has to get out.
Yeah, I think it's, again, like, and like churches are not perfect because it's like been from the first time, but how you were saying in the beginning, how it's like with protests and riots, like the perfect people who should go and help is the community. So it's so important for the church to first focus on themselves, like get better, because the community like is in need of a church. Like the church is, it's so easy for a church to go and help a family. Like we're the hands, and we should be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so if it worries me that if the church doesn't do its job, like who is going to do the job? Like it's going to be people that don't have the principles and values of God. It's going to be government who lacks and doesn't know exactly what the people need. And that's like one of the things is like, I think the church needs to do a better job, because then they're going to go and like one of the things that I think you wanted to bring up, which I think is a good segue too, is to the Black Lives Matter organization, not the movement, the organization, because like we were looking at one of the videos where it was showing that all the proceeds were going to Democratic campaigns. And I was just like, okay, like I think it would be like, my opinion is that the funds would be better for in like the grassroots organizations, like people who want to help like the youth, you know, in school thrive, people who want to help prisons, like straight to the hands that are doing like the hands and feet work. Because government, there's so many like bureaucracies, it has to go through so many people for it to actually go to the citizen. So that's one of the things that was worrying me. And that's where it's like the church needs to stand up, because if the church is not going to do it, they're going to think government is the answer. And I mean, government has failed time and time again in my eyes. So that's one of the things that I was just like, oh, like I agree, Black Lives Matter. I agree in the movement. I'm glad that people are using the social media presence to help those who are oppressed. But the Black Lives organization, I'm like, I think money could be used better to like the hands and feet, you know, like the people on the ground, the community, the grassroots organizations that are doing more work.
Aspect of it, I think it goes back to what you said, that because the church isn't the answer, they think government is. They think that, well, we have these officials in office, this is what's going to help kind of, I guess, bring our agenda into alignment, you know, and come to pass, which is unfortunate, because I do think that if the church was doing what the church was supposed to do, it could alleviate a lot of this. Like, we could be the answer, and right now we're not. Unfortunately, we're just as the people who are trying to figure it out, and that's heartbreaking to me. Like, that's what bothers me the most about this. Like, oh my gosh, like the conversations I have with God, like, oh my God, it's heartbreaking that the church isn't like a foundation right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a solid rock that people can go to, which allows people to become extremists. So then you have people that's like, only shop Black businesses and only this and only that, and that's a segregation in itself. And F the police, and like, they become extremists with their beliefs, and there's no center, there's no diversity to it, there isn't any well-rounded perspective around it, because God is not in it.
Yeah, I hope smaller ministries can see, like, we need to have these conversations too, because so many times it's easy to preach about oppression but not touch on those like difficult topics about, like, well, what is our community doing for this? Like, ask those hard questions that make us really like look at our souls. And I think that's why it's important to not give up on the local church, because a lot of people also like want, it's either like despair or like, oh, nothing is wrong with the church, you know? And that's even us, we have to see, like, I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, I give up, the church is like, like, I can't fix it. But it's like, we have to be constantly reminded that, like, that's why I wish my church was more diverse, and I don't give up on it. It's been like this for years, but I'm like, you know what, if leadership, at least I can be a voice in leadership, at least I can, you know, maybe I'm the only voice they'll listen to that reminds them, hey, we have to be this way, or you guys, what you guys did was not right. Because as soon as you told me, I was like, pastor, like, one of your leaders said this was not right. It wasn't a leader, it was a server, but I don't know who it was actually. But I was like, this is not right, like, you have to tell them. And I think it's also, we have to like not have complete despair and be like, oh, well, church is not doing it, so this person's not doing it, but always like,
Yeah.
It's this never ending struggle, and knowing that we don't fight against flesh and blood. Like, it's not a people thing, it's like a spiritual warfare thing. Like, the enemy is trying to pit us against each other, yeah, and use like whatever he can, even if it looks good, to do something evil, and just be like alert and discerning. And you know, that's what I think.
Yeah, that's why it's like, I keep going back to the scripture, like, many will say, Lord, 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 I did this, I did that in your name, and Lord's gonna be like, I never knew you. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in church right now whose heart is not resembling Christ. And it's not me saying this from a judgmental perspective, but it's me saying it from know the fruit that they bear.
Yeah.
And some people get that mixed up, like, oh, the Bible says don't judge, but the Bible also says to know who's among you, basically, to know the fruit they bear. And so I think I would, don't take this the wrong way, but I wonder, and I would challenge you guys, like, if you guys had like, with you guys as leaders or with your church, if you guys had a discussion about this racial issue, I wonder how many people would actually understand it, how many people would actually be empathetic towards it. I wonder how many people would really be able to grasp it. I'm not trying to be funny, but I know, like, it was, you know, like, me and Carrie have had our talks, and then you mentioned that you had a struggle with, like, all lives matters, Black lives matter. So, and I know that you guys love Jesus and live for him, so I just wonder how many more in the church, and in your church particularly, is struggling with this. And some may not even realize that they're struggling with it. And then it's something that needs to be addressed, whether you have a diverse church or not, because the reality is, you're going to come across other people. You know, and it doesn't matter if they're Black, they're Asian, whatever. If you have racial issues embedded in you that you have not addressed, you're going to keep perpetuating this. And it's so normal to you, and you don't even realize your own biases, that when someone walks up from a different cultural background or ethnic background, you assume that they came for community service. You assume that they want food. You assume that they're, you know, and that's something that has to be addressed.
Yeah, I honestly, like, you asking that question, I honestly think the community I've been around, because I go to churches, I think they've been ignoring it.
Yeah.
They've been ignoring it as much as they can. If they don't bring up the subject, it never happens. If they don't have anyone of a color, they don't bring it up. Like, I haven't heard anything about it. And I, like I said, I go to 2 different churches, Hispanic and a Korean one, and I haven't heard anything. I think I've had all my conversations husband here at home. We're like talking about it, and well, like you said, I had a little chat with you, and that's about it. And then that sucks because, like you guys said, since we're in quarantine, all the information people are getting is from news that either one side or the other, and they flip everything around, and they're not getting no information from the church at all, at least around the communities I've been.
No, I know our church has, like, when the George Floyd thing, they said like, oh, it's sad, and they talked about it, but it's very like surface
one incident conversation.
Yeah, and so that's true, because I think the church does a good job at complaining, like, well, they're teaching sex ed to our children or whatever, and it's like, well, we come to a point where it's too late, so they get mad at the community for teaching them this that they don't want to be taught. But it's like, why didn't you start the conversation then, if you don't want the secular world to educate your children? And I do think it's something that I think we need to, and I think it's a sin, like, we need to confront. And it's very selfish to just think about our own community, or like our Hispanic community, our like our little bubble, because we're called to like not be selfish, like we're called like to. So I think that's something that has frustrated me before, that it's like something I've thought about now. And even if it just has to be us, like, to bring it about, because that's why, like, I'm glad, and we talked about it with Karen, like, who can we talk to on our channel? Because I was telling her, like, even me, like, we need to know more. Like, I don't think that we know everything. I for sure, we were just talking about kids, like raising kids. She asked me, like, do you worry about Elijah? And I'm like, no, like, it never had crossed my mind that I had to worry about, like, Elijah being confronted with the police. But then she's like, she's gonna have Black children, and like, she's thought about it. And I'm like, I have not been exposed to those things, and I'm not gonna learn if I don't like submerge myself and talk about it with people. And it might be ugly. I might be like, oh crap, I'm selfish, like I didn't think about it. But it has to be done. Like, healing has to be done.
That is so real. Going back to the parenting, I think, and I say this like very respectfully, but I think like your responsibility, Linda, as a mother, even though you're not raising a Black child, is to still bring that awareness, teaching him to, because I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but he probably ain't got no Black friends around him, like little kids or anything. I don't know.
Yeah, little kids, no.
Yeah, so he probably only sees his kind. And studies show like kids begin to like exhibit like discrimination very early. So if you were to have like an Hispanic person and a Black person, who would he go to? If you had a Hispanic doll and a Black doll, which one would he choose? Things like that. And so I think it's important, you as a parent, is to teach him even now diversity, teach him now to love people regardless of what they look like, things like that, to get him well-rounded around people that don't just look like him, and to teach him to stand up for people when he sees injustices. That's so important. I know for me, like, I was in elementary when I first experienced racism, and it wasn't from a white person. Like, I grew up in South Central, that's Black and Hispanic. And this guy, he would call me like really nasty. I know chocolate means chocolate, but he said it like in a really nasty, like derogatory way. And he would always call me that. And then I remember having a guy, like, not a guy, he was a kid. I liked him, I had a crush on him. And he told me that he couldn't date me because he couldn't go out with me, basically. He didn't say date, but elementary language. Like, he couldn't like me because his mama said because I was Black. Like that's important. Like, that was elementary. And that's what his parents were teaching him. And growing up, I always, I'm grateful for my husband, granted, but I always felt like I couldn't like anyone outside of my race. I always felt like I wouldn't be accepted because I didn't look like them. Like, yeah, he could like me at school, but his mama ain't about to accept me at his house. And so it's important that you teach him these things early, and don't teach him this because, well, Carrie's gonna have Black kids. Because like I had a conversation with Carrie, like I challenged her, like I said, well, do you only care because your husband's Black? Like having that, and then she has to do the deep work to be like, dang, is that the only reason why I care?
Yeah.
You know, and that's not to say that she's a bad person, but it's just understanding, why do I only care? It's checking your heart, basically. You know, why do I only care because my husband is Black? And so like you only caring because, you know, like Carrie's gonna have Black kids or whatever. Not saying that you said that, but just being mindful of that. So I think it's important as parents to teach our kids that, because just as much as we're going to have conversations about racism and things like that, the other aspect of is the other parents who are not Black should be having these same conversations with their kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And you deal with, because you said like at USC, they asked you if you're a fan. How do you deal with, like, what is your response? Do you take that time to educate them? Are you like mean to them? Do you like, are you polite and just ignore it? Like, how do you respond to that?
So I've had different responses, honestly. So like I caught myself like in the beginning I would be like, no, I'm a student. And then I started realizing, like, wait a minute, you didn't ask him, you know, this white guy or this Middle Eastern guy, you know, was he a student? You didn't ask him for his ID. You didn't ask him, was he a fan? So then I started getting offended because I realized what was going on. It wasn't an honest mistake. It was your own bias towards me. So I honestly, I never took the time to, well, I guess I have in some instances where I'd be like, I would challenge them, like, well, why did you assume that I was a fan? Why couldn't I be a student?
Yeah.
Or, and then I would actually like give, I guess, kudos to those who didn't ask me, who actually took the time to say, oh, you're a student? Oh, you used to go to USC? I would actually give them kudos and help them and let them know, like, I'm happy you asked me that, because a lot of my experiences has been the complete opposite.
Let's just wrap it up. We love this conversation
Yeah,
and just
I
talking
enjoyed
with you. So we're going to encourage everyone, if they're interested in learning more about this subject or anything about what you shared with us, because you gave us a little bit of everything, they can write in the comments and let us know what they want to know more about you, or if they want to have a conversation with three of us again,
Or other questions that we didn't touch on.
But we really want to thank you for taking the time and like talking to us and giving us more information to be more aware. I know that we still have a lot of work to do to be more understanding and work at church and everything. So just, do you want to leave us with a few words before we end this?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for inviting me on your channel. It's been a pleasure. This dialogue is definitely necessary and was great. If you guys want to continue the conversation offline, I'm free to do that as well. But just to your viewers, I just encourage them, like, if you feel like you have experienced your own biases, your own racist thoughts, your own stereotypes, like, don't beat yourself up about it. Just do the hard work of reflecting and doing the work of dismantling that mindset. It doesn't make you a bad person if you realize, like, wait a minute, like, I even have some of these reserved feelings. It's just, you know, now that you're aware, do the work. If you know better, do better. And then, yes, like, just, you know, continue to watch your channel, like, subscribe, you know, comment below, share. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good day, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Whoa, that was a great conversation. I finished all of my wine. It was really good. I know it's a little quiet because I was like just listening and like really learning. And Yoshinique did hit one of the points that she said, maybe it opened Carrie's mind that the reason why I want to know more about this subject is because it hit closer to me. If I wouldn't have had a Black husband, or if he wouldn't have told me the story, would I really have cared about this? So that made me start thinking, like, okay, I need to check myself of what's going on in the world. Yeah. And I know you want to add on to summarize. Yeah, I just think it's important what we talked about, like, being a community, because I know one of my weaknesses is it's not easy for me to be compassionate. You know, that's a weakness of mine, so I have to surround myself with people who are compassionate and challenge myself. Like, what the important thing is, we're not gonna know if we're wrong if we're with people who think like us. So every time, like, a story comes out or a situation comes out and I think something, like, right away, I have to be like, why do I think this? Is there another viewpoint? Is there, like, challenge myself to make sure, do I have stereotypes? Like, you know, like, we can't like always recognize that there's a teachable moment and that we don't know it all. So I think it's important.
And we are open for any question, comments, or concerns of anything that we talked about. If you guys are interested in having a part 2 or 3 or with Yoshinique or with somebody else about this movement, this matter that's going on, please feel free to leave a comment so we can go ahead and do that for you. And that being said, we saw one of our comments and someone said, please talk about finances. We heard you. That was a commercial. We heard you. And shout out to Ashley. She's the one who asked about...
Thank you, Ashley.
Yes, thank you for watching. She asked if we can do a video about finances. So next week, we will have the video about finances.
Talking about money, which some people don't like talking about money. I'm an open book.
Yes. Most likely we're going to invite our husbands so they can give us, because they both do it differently.
Yeah.
We're all like in the same time, but do it a little bit different. And then we're also sure how we do finances.
Yes.
So hope to see you in the next video.
Yeah, so thank you guys for watching.
Bye.
Bye.